welcome. This is the fourth edition of CPU EDU. We do one every month, the last Thursday of every month, and we try to pick a different topic to go over to educate our service agreement clients so that they can have added value. We did miss April for a couple of different reasons, but we picked it back up here in May, and we will continue to do so on the same schedule. We appreciate the partnerships and relationships that everyone has with CPU. We are doing this for you to add value. If you come up with any questions during the presentation or after, you can type them in the chat. We'll field the questions at the end and just answer everything that we can. Today's topic that we chose was a portion of Microsoft 365. There are a lot of things that can be discussed about Microsoft 365. The topic or segment that we're doing today is a small portion of it, and it is about understanding licensing. There are a lot of different licensing that you can get with Microsoft 365 that offer different perks and different advantages, and we thought it would be beneficial to cover some of the more popular or more used licenses to explain what they are, what they come with, what they include, and what advantages or disadvantages there are to one over the other. We will move into the first one, which is Exchange Online Plan 1. All Microsoft 365 plans allow you to work smarter. They allow you to be remote, where you can utilize these applications and components from anywhere. And the first plan starts with having email. So Exchange Online Plan 1 is literally just email. It does include an admin center that has centralized management to it. Things that you can manage include your users, their passwords, mailboxes. You can have aliases for users. You can assign different licenses to different users, and security and a lot more things that the admin center allows. This admin center is typically managed by CPU when we resell 365, but someone in your organization can certainly have access and can do that in conjunction with us as well, just so that it is a party on our end that is aware and knows how it's all set up, and a party on your end too could be involved as well. There is a 50 gig mailbox that comes with the Exchange Online Plan 1, and this just means all your emails sent and received take up space, and the space limit for Exchange Plan 1 is 50 gigs. That is a lot. It would take quite a bit of years of email to use that up, and it can be varied, and there's other plans that change that, but a 50 gig is standard, and it usually suffices for a majority of users. The messages that can be sent are allowed up to 150. They are set lower than that by default, but those defaults can be changed. Emails containing text, even if it's a large email with a lot of text, they're very small in size. You would run into larger emails when you start adding PDF attachments and things like that. But by default, the attachment size limit 365 is 50 megs for the attachment. That can also be altered by administration, and email messages individually are allowed up to 150 if they are set to do so. The other thing that Exchange Online Plan 1 includes is Outlook. So probably all familiar with the Outlook application, but this is not the application, it is the web version of it. It does function very similarly to what we think when we think about the traditional desktop application, but it does have its differences. Focused inbox, it just looks a little bit different and it functions a bit differently. But being on the web, it can be checked, from any device, any computer that you can log into a browser with. So Exchange Plan 1 is pretty basic, but it does provide what you need in email to be able to manage that email and also access it via the web. Joe, anything you'd like to add there?
Hold on. I don't know what I'm doing with Zoom. I missed my cue on the first one, but I do want to add in a little bit here. Exchange Online Plan 1 is basically the introductory license when you're using Microsoft 365 for email. What it does do here is introduce the admin center, and this is where all your major mail flow comes into play. So although we're not going to talk about it today with the licensings and understanding the licensings, you get to now implement distribution lists, shared mailboxes, and some other items that aren't a considered a license with Microsoft through the admin center. Just another thing to note too, if you already have Office 365, the note that it says 50 gig mailbox and messages up to 150 meg, if you're starting out fresh, that's what they give you out of the box. If you've had a historical tenant and you've been using Office 365 or Microsoft 365 for email for several years, your limitations are lower because they didn't retroactively upgrade those. So if you're a current user and you see that your limitations are lower, you can definitely give us a call and go in there and we can up those limitations for all your mailboxes.
That's a good point. Very good addition there. It is definitely manageable in a lot of different ways, and it can be complex or simple based off of what your needs as a business are, and we can help you figure out what that is and get you there. Moving into the second license that we'll discuss today is Exchange Online Plan 2. It's not very, pretty to just change from Plan 1 to Plan 2, but there are some significant differences where you may need Plan 2 as opposed to Plan 1. Plan 2 obviously includes everything that Plan 1 did and a couple of different items. And you can see here, the admin center still exists. You can have now 100 gigs of mail in total per mailbox. So it essentially doubles the mailbox size. So when we implement Exchange Plan 2 for some individuals, it's because they are migrating or coming from an email where they have a large amount of messages, or they are getting a fresh mailbox and they know that they have high levels of communication. They send a lot of PDFs with drawings or images and things like that, and that they will need to be able to go above the 50 meg that 50 gig that Plan 1 comes with. It still includes that web version of Outlook that we discussed. You can log in and check it just the same in this one. But the major difference between Plan 1 and Plan 2, other than the mailbox size, is that it includes data loss prevention. Data loss prevention is something that Microsoft implements, and it's a security solution that identifies and helps prevent unsafe or inappropriate sharing, transfer, or use of sensitive data in your email. It can help your organization monitor and protect that sensitive information. It helps you achieve compliance with regulations such as HIPAA and GDPR, which is General Data Protection Regulation. And these are just compliances that different organizations may have to adhere to. So Exchange Plan 1 would not do that automatically, whereas Exchange Plan 2 does have that built in to give that protection and that compliancy. However, you can use Exchange Plan 1 and still get these compliances with other applications that we offer, such as Mail Protector and other programs that we've actually discussed in past CPU EDU moments. I believe it was January, where we did cybersecurity and we touched on email encryption, and we touched on inbound and outbound spam and mail filtering and things like that when we did our cybersecurity educational moment. But DLP, or data loss prevention, and in accompaniment with the larger mailbox, is really where Plan 2 stands out versus Plan 1. Do you agree there, Joe, or is there any other thing you'd like to mention on that?
Well, I think just the built-in data loss prevention is a nice touch. The idea, one of the questions that may have come up, do you have to have Plan 1 to have Plan 2? The answer is no. You have one or the other. Plan 2 is just kind of like what Justin was saying, is the expansion of Plan 1 to allow for more larger mailboxes. The idea that most users won't need 100 gig. And there are other ways to address a large mailbox with a lot of historical data without upgrading to Plan 2. But sometimes it's just simplest and easiest for the end user to be familiar with their current mailbox to upgrade to Plan 2. But the one thing I wanted to touch on was, once you upgrade to Plan 2, you don't have to keep the Plan 1 license. You're not stacking licenses, you're replacing them.
Yeah, that is a good point. They are two separate licenses. And even if you start out with Exchange Plan 1, you find yourself communicating a lot via email, sending a lot of attachments, receiving a lot of attachments, and you do creep up or even hit that 50 gig limit, you can remove the Exchange Plan 1 and then implement the Plan 2 to give you the additional mailbox space. Very good mention there, Joe. Thank you. The next license that we are going to discuss today is called Apps for Business. And these apps that you see here on the screen and that we'll talk about, everybody's very familiar with those that I'm sure. They are the worldwide standard for business and personal processing, and each of those applications allow you to process in a different way. The previous Exchange Plan 1 and 2 only include email and the web version of Outlook that we discussed, whereas Apps for Business does not include email, but does include the full desktop versions of all the applications that you see here. Word, which we know is just textual word processing. Excel allows you to create spreadsheets and do some data entry. PowerPoint allows you to create presentations like you see here with slides that you can present data. Outlook is included as a full desktop application here, which is the traditional mail client that a lot of us are probably familiar with. It also includes Access, which is a database manipulation software that not a ton of people utilize or know about per se, but it is there. Publisher is another application that gets overlooked a little bit, but that's kind of like a creative document application where you can put text and images and things like that all into things such as flyers or any type of creative document you want to produce. And it also includes OneDrive, which is Microsoft's cloud file storage application. And OneDrive is important here because it's one of the key features of this license and licenses thereafter. And it allows up to 1 terabyte of cloud storage. So it can be accessed via the web or from anywhere locally that you have the OneDrive application installed on your desktop or laptop. And it just is a cloud storage that you can put files or folders in, that you can not tie yourself to a computer, whereas you can access all those files from anywhere as long as you can log into the OneDrive. It can be something that you just have personally. You can have things or files in there that you share. Any type of files can be in there, and you can just use that personally and share it with people without being tied to a specific computer or server. Another thing that this Apps for Business is to mention, one license, so one paid license can be installed on up to 5 devices. So you could have the Apps for Business license, and you can install the apps on your desktop. You can install it on your laptop. You can install it on your tablet, etc. That way they can all share that one license without having to purchase multiple for you to use, as we all have multiple different types of devices. So that's important to know, that you don't have to buy one for your desktop at home or your office, buy one for your laptop that you use on the road and things like that. One license can be installed up to 5 times. And the last to touch on here is the applications. We know they get outdated, newer versions are released, revisions are released. And in the past, we've had to buy a year copy of Office, quite a while back. And then when the newer one came out, you either had to buy that again and install that and continue to keep buying the new applications. Well, with the licensing and Microsoft being subscription, it will automatically update as Microsoft changes and updates their products. As we all know, they love to do that quite often without having to buy another version like we've had to do. So that is good to know, that you'll be keeping up with the latest and greatest applications that Microsoft provides without having to go out and purchase another copy or another license. Anything to add there, Joe?
Yeah, just a couple things. One thing to mention here is the Apps for Business license, like Justin had mentioned, doesn't include email. And the one license covers up to 5 devices. Now, those 5 devices can be your desktop computer, your laptop computer, a tablet, a Mac, etc. But to note that, especially in a commercial environment, Microsoft considers that per user. So you wouldn't necessarily use this license if you were trying to cover multiple users, because that would be a gray area of compliancy. However, if you had one user, say me, and I had multiple devices, that's where this would come into play. But I wouldn't do it in a scenario that user A and user B and user C are sharing this license, because that's a gray area of the compliancy. The other aspect there is the automatic updates as applications. I think Justin can contest to or agree that I don't like spending money. So this is the area that the scenario for the business should consider. One, weighing the apps for business license on a monthly basis versus just purchasing a copy of Office. The benefit purchasing a copy of Office is it's only one device. Holding the subscription is it covers up to 5 devices for one user. Also, the subscription keeps everything continuously up to date from here on out until Microsoft decides to change their mind. Whereas buying that one application, buying that one-time fee, Office 2019 or Office 2022, you buy it once, you can use it on one PC, and then when it's finally what Microsoft considers end of life, it's out of date. Those are the significant differences between the apps for business license.
Yeah, and a good point you bring up. It really is to the volition of Microsoft 365, but we've seen where a representative from Microsoft will reach out to us and do an audit, if you will, on the licensing for a specific client, and that's where it's important to adhere to Joe's point, where it does allow the user to have multiple devices. It doesn't allow you to share those licenses between users, and that could come up in an audit, which is rare, but I definitely have seen happen. So that's a good point to mention there too, Joe. Thank you. So we'll move on. Business Basic. This is the first total package, if you will, that Microsoft offers. It allows for you to combine having the emails from Exchange Plan 1 and 2 that we talked about, as well as the application. These are some of the same things, but we'll touch on a few different items or where these vary in just a moment. But the same admin center, which is very important to have, is included. It includes the mailbox limitations of Exchange Plan 1, so the 50 gig mailbox, as well as the 150 message limit. It also includes the 1 terabyte OneDrive storage that we mentioned earlier from Apps for Business. The application side with Basic, however, is still only the web versions. So just like you had the web version of Outlook with Exchange Online, you have the web version of Word and all of those other processing applications we discussed. So it does include applications and email, but the applications are all web-based. And some people like that, and some people prefer to have the desktop versions. This is the first copy we've discussed that also includes Teams and SharePoint. Teams is a centralized pane of glass that allows for textual conversations with some file sharing added in there amongst the members or users or licenses that you have within your organization. It also allows for video chatting to occur. It allows for calendar sharing and viewing of your calendar and other calendars, other employees' calendars if you choose to share it. So it's really just a great way to intercommunicate within your organization. And Microsoft has introduced Teams in the last few years, and it just kind of encompasses all that. And the other thing that I have highlighted here is SharePoint. So SharePoint is, think of it as a large scale usage of the OneDrive backbone that we mentioned earlier. So all the users have their individual OneDrives where they can store files and folders and things like that and share them. But SharePoint is a culmination of all the licensed user storage area. So there can be one place that you go to, which is your SharePoint. And if you choose to, you can view other people's OneDrives, create centralized areas that people can contribute their files and things like that too. It does have specific permissions and sharing options, so you can choose to or not to share specific information, and multiple people with licensing in your organization can all access the same files and things of that nature that you allow them to do so. So the two things that it introduces with this is Teams, which is just internal communication, and SharePoint, which is internal file and folder sharing, if you will.
And there's a couple of important areas on this slide to talk about. One, this is the first license that introduces to collaboration. You know, with email, we all know what email is. It's been around for 30 years, if not more. But now we're introducing collaboration where we can share files, communicate back and forth. We're also introducing business tools all on the web-based app. Microsoft is currently in the process of really modifying the Teams licensing. This is the first license that introduces where you have Teams pre-canned into it. And sometimes it's a scenario where it's just cheaper to upgrade to the basic license versus buying a standalone Teams license. But I'm not top too much time. We're running short on it to get through the other licenses. But just know that basic is the first one where you really introduce collaboration in your organization.
Yeah, that's a very good term, collaboration there. And having all of those things plus the teams in OneDrive does allow that. And it is very beneficial and efficient when used correctly. So good point there, Joe. Moving on to the last license we'll discuss is Business Standard. It is the most popular license, and it, as you would expect, combines everything we've discussed prior, contains the admin center, Exchange Plan 1's mailbox limitations. It has the OneDrive storage from apps for business and business basic that we discussed. The major difference here is that it has the desktop versions of the applications as opposed to where basic only had the web version. So that is why it's the most popular, is because it encompasses everything essentially that you need. You need to be able to send email. You need to be able to open your applications on your desktop, which most of us are familiar with and comfortable with, versus the web versions. And then those collaborative, if you will, Joe, applications such as Teams and SharePoint that allow all of those things to occur.
That's right. Yep. Basically, this license is a merger of Plan 1 and apps for business. You can download these. It's the same 5 devices for user. It allows collaboration. And just to clarify, we talked previously about Plan 1 and Plan 2. These licenses come bundled with Plan 1. Yes, you can drop off Plan 1 and add on Plan 2 if you need a larger mailbox, just in case if anybody was wondering that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because you may need business standard, but you may need a larger mailbox. So that can be done. Very good point there, Joe. And we will move on a little bit to open it up for questions that people may have. We understand time is value. We set aside 30 minutes for this to get the message across. And we don't want to take up anyone's time that they could be using elsewhere. So I'll move to the last slide before my outro. If anyone wants to unmute themselves or type in the chat a question about a license that we have discussed, or maybe something about Microsoft 365 that we didn't discuss that you have a question about, we'll be glad to answer.
I will unmute myself, Justin. Not that I have a question real quick, but just to say that there's a ton more licenses with Microsoft 365, and it may be part of your outro. If there's some advanced tools you want to see, they may be covered in a higher end license. Also, there's government licenses, nonprofit licenses, and they all come at different levels with different features of security.
Good addition there. And yes, you are correct. It is to mention that Microsoft 365 is vast, and the licensing is just one small part of it, but it is the part that comes with the monetary value and gives the access to your staff who get these licenses. So that's what we've chosen to discuss first. And over the next few months, we'll have other Microsoft 365 CPU EDUs where we take a deeper dive. So I'll give one more moment. If anyone wants to unmute themselves or type a question in the chat, we'll be glad to address it. And if there are no questions here in the moment, you can always reach out to CPU, myself, Joe, any of the staff members here. We will answer any questions and help you better understand after this webinar if necessary. Okay, so just in closing, Microsoft 365, it is the standard for application processing in business and personal, and it's our preferred method of email communication and protection, which is very important. So it looks like we have a question here.
We do.
Go ahead, Joe.
Caleb's asking, and it's not a dumb question, but yes, Microsoft bases it on the number of users. Now, you can get creative with your new users. That's kind of what I'd say. A scenario where you may have a user that's not a name, but a user such as guest PC, or you might would have public. So yeah, you can get a little bit creative there. Like I said, you're kind of getting into a gray area with the licensing, especially the apps, but a user is not a particular physical human being.
Yeah, you're right, Joe. And that is a good question. You can get creative, as Joe said, with certain departments or people who may have the same role. So that is something that can be discussed of what your needs are, and we can help you figure out if it needs to be different or individual users, or if there can be some sort of shared option there that will still meet compliancy if they were to ask. Good question. Anything else?
I know you're working on closing, Justin.
Yes.
If you use Office 365 and you have a question of what you have licensed and duplications, we can run an audit. If we are partnered with your organization and tenant, we can run that audit and export the data you may need if you have any questions beyond this.
Absolutely. And we thought this was important to do because knowing the license, they're beneficial for saving money by using the right license and not paying for something you don't need. It can help with efficiency with some of the applications like Teams and SharePoint that you may not have knew about or didn't have the license for. So we just wanted to put this out there and start the conversations and help people